Welcome back, my friends. My name is Rogan, and you are watching Mysterious Stoner in a Bowler. Today I'm going to share with you a little bit about one of the Bible's most famous characters. Very important to the Christian faith, the Hebrew faith, and also the Islamic faith. We are going to talk about Abraham. Unfortunately, I don't have any marijuana today, so I will be a drinker in a bowler. Stay thirsty, my friends. And so without any further delay, let us begin. The story of Abraham begins where he is apparently still living with the rest of his family. This was kind of a traditional thing. He was living in his father's house. There's no description of his father's amount of wealth or anything, but it is rather assumed that that Abram is relatively well off. Oh, and by the way, he does not start off in the Bible as going by the name Abraham, but instead going by the name Abram. I'm not sure what the name meaning difference is there, but it is different. God changes it later on. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And God comes to Abram and tells him, you need to leave. You need to go to this place I am going to tell you. And the place is Canaan, where a bunch of other people already live. But he tells Abram, leave your father's home and go to this land, because I am going to give it to your future generations, your children, your grandchildren, and so on. And I will bless you. I will make your future generations as many as the stars of the sky and the sands in the ocean. And so Abraham leaves, and he gets to Canaan, and he's hanging out there. And this is taking place in chapter 12, for anyone who wants to follow along. And God is making more promises to Abram while he's in Canaan. I don't know why he keeps telling these things to Abram, but he basically just says the same things over and over again. But then a famine comes to Canaan, where Abram is staying. And Abram leaves Canaan and goes to Egypt, because apparently Egypt isn't doing so badly. And as Abraham is getting close to the border, he turns to his wife and he says in verse 11, behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Or in other words, he was saying, I know you're a very beautiful woman. Therefore it shall come to pass that when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, this is his wife. And they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. I don't know why Abram thought this way about the Egyptians. He is pretending to be very scared, it seems. Because honestly, I mean, how often does this happen? He thinks that, I mean, he seems like he's racially profiling the Egyptians here. I don't know how the Egyptians were back then, but we are about to find out how the Pharaoh was back in those times, how the Pharaoh reacted to all this. But Abram is afraid, and I don't understand why he is afraid. He is afraid of the famine, and he is afraid of the Egyptians killing him, even though supposedly Almighty God has come to him and promised that he will have hundreds and thousands of generations after him and has made all these promises. Now, he is a bit concerned partly because he has no children. That is something I forgot to mention. He has had no children at this time. Isaac has not yet been born or any of that. If you know about Abram and Isaac and all that. But that has not happened yet. This is only the beginning. And Abram is afraid. It seems like he does not have much in the way of faith in God. If he had faith in God, he never would have left Canaan, because he would have had faith that God would provide for him. And he would not have had to ask his wife to lie. Probably made her lie, but we'll say he asked. That he asked his wife to lie for him, instead of depending on God to save him. So, right out the gate, we see Abram has really not much in the way of faith in God, and he is a liar. He's not being honest about this, and there is no real reason given. He is acting paranoid. Maybe he smoked a little bit too much weed or something. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Now, the reason why I'm pretty sure Abram was relatively well off was because, certainly, Abram and his wife would not be noticed so easily if they didn't have other things to attract attention to them. I don't know how well off they were, but they were well off enough to where people were looking when these strangers came into their homeland and they noticed this beautiful woman with Abram. But anyways, because of how kings and pharaohs tended to be, taking wives, concubines, and such was no big deal. But, well, alright, it was a big deal if there was to be an alliance made. But if I don't think Abram was that well off to where he could be considered an ally necessarily, but apparently Sarai was that attractive to where Pharaoh wanted her. And so it says, and he entreated Abram well for her sake. Pharaoh, that is. He liked her. And he had sheep and oxen and donkeys and menservants and maidservants and camels, all given to Abram to have Sarai. And then this is interesting. The very next verse, after it says that Pharaoh gave all these things to Abram, the very next verse it says, and the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. This is strange because Pharaoh has no idea that Sarai is Abram's wife. He doesn't know because Sarai went along with it, right? So why is God punishing Pharaoh? Shouldn't God be punishing Abram for lying to Pharaoh and putting everyone in this strange situation? But then the very next verse right after that is just as interesting and odd, I find. I will tell you. The Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house, and with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife, right? And Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, she is my sister, so I might have taken her to wife? Now therefore behold thy wife, take her, and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, his wife, and all that he had. I find this a bit odd because Pharaoh is heathen, and the Egyptians worship a plethora of deities. The more accurate term would be pantheon. But perhaps, according to Bible history, perhaps God was a little bit more universal. I don't know. I think this might conflict a bit with actual history. But how would Pharaoh know that it was Jehovah that sent these plagues to him and not one of the other gods, like Anubis or Sekhmet? I'm not sure who does what over in the Egyptian pantheon, but Abram's God shouldn't be the first god on Pharaoh's list of gods to consult and try and figure out who's doing this to me and why. And he somehow knows. I'm guessing that Sarai told him, perhaps? So I don't know how Pharaoh knows, but somehow Pharaoh found out without Abram telling him that Sarai was his wife. And Pharaoh is understandably pissed off. He is completely in the right. Everything he was doing according to the customs of the day. He was being respectful towards Abram, and apparently he hadn't slept with Sarai yet. It doesn't say. There's a lot of things not said here. A lot of vital information that is just left out of the story that really doesn't help make this any sense. This is an unusual story to be believed. But Abram comes into this situation lying. He gets all these gifts from Pharaoh. Pharaoh nearly sleeps with Sarai, I guess. Then all these plagues out of nowhere show up. Pharaoh somehow figures out that it's not one of his gods, but this stranger's god that is upset. And he's not upset at Abram for lying. He's upset for Pharaoh for ignorantly trying to get with Abram's wife. You see the bullshit that is going on here? I think what really happened is that Abram scammed Pharaoh. I don't know how. Maybe he was actually good at scamming. Maybe he was good with his words, at explaining himself, getting him out of nasty situations, or maybe he had something with the plagues involved. I don't know. But Pharaoh let Abram go with the gifts that he gave to him for trying to get with Sarai. And God doesn't punish Abram, he punishes Pharaoh. Not only does God not even say a word to Abram about this, he doesn't even tell Abram, hey, you know, that wasn't really nice what you did to Pharaoh. You should give all that stuff back that he gave to you for Sarai. That stuff isn't yours. Those servants, the donkeys, the camels, the ox, the sheep, all that, give it back. No. 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 No, it's not there. Abram keeps the stuff. Pharaoh says, keep the shit. Get out. You sure this isn't what Abram had in mind all along from the beginning? Abram was full of shit walking into this, and he was full of shit and Pharaoh's shit walking out. Sounds like we have quite the scammer on our hands here. And God doesn't punish him for it at all. After God got so angry at people doing whatever they wanted before and flooding the world and kicking out Adam and Eve for becoming smarter. But this guy, Abram, he cheats and he lies, and God punishes the victim of Abram's lie instead of Abram himself. I'm calling bullshit here. I am calling bullshit on Abram and his connection with God. I don't think he really has one. So let's move on, shall we, to the next little interesting bit about Abram. Not only do I think that Abram was a scammer, I think he also may have had a really messed up sexual fetish. And please remember, this is for mature audiences. I smoke weed, I drink alcohol, and what I'm about to talk about regarding Abram is very mature. Just a heads up. The reason why I say Abram may have this fetish, well, as we can see right out the gate, Abram is already lying to people about his wife and has no faith in God. So, we'll get to the fetish, but to understand where we are, Abram goes through, well, he goes back to Canaan, he goes through some drama at home. God starts speaking to him again, and they are having this conversation, mostly one-sided, where God is telling him, oh, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that, this land is going to be yours, blah, 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 even though Abram has no kids yet. And, you know, he's just going on and on and on. And then he comes to what he wants Abram to do in the return. He's made all these promises, and he even says that you will no longer be called Abram, you will be called Abraham, and your wife will no longer be called Sarai, but Sarah. But there's one thing I need you to do for me, for all this to be official. This is going to be the spiritual handshake with me, your God, so I can make all these things come true for you. And we come to verse 10, where God is speaking to Abram, or Abraham at this point. And he says, this is my covenant, which ye shall keep between me and you, and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. This is chapter 17, by the way. Verse 12. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man-child in your generations. He that is born in your house, or bought with money, of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with thy money must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. God basically just told Abraham, if you don't mutilate your penis, you can't have any of my promises. What part of that makes any fucking sense to you? It doesn't make any to me. What kind of a God is this? Going back to the sexual, there is an actual fetish for genitalia mutilation. People are into some weird shit. Now, obviously, most people are not into mutilating their genitalia. And I'm fairly certain that has always been the case. Small minority for disfiguring themselves between the legs, and the majority of people being like, no thank you, I will pass. I think Abraham had one of those. He's already been proven to be a scammer. He successfully scammed Pharaoh out of a huge gift. I mean, back in the day, sheep and oxen by themselves were very valuable. And servants and donkeys and camels, holy shit. The things you can do with those. You can make some serious money and income. Those were the money and income of those times. Abram made himself rich off of lying to Pharaoh, and God was okay with it. Not only was God okay with it, he completely ignored it. And then we have this covenant God is trying to make with Abram. It's like, hey, leave your parents, your family. I didn't see what happened in Egypt. Forget about it. I cursed Pharaoh. I helped you out. Whatever. Let's make this covenant right here. I'm gonna give you all this stuff, but you have to mess up your dick. That's the main requirement. You believe what I tell you and you mess up your penis. Not just yours, all the men in your house, all the kids, 8 days and older, all the servants that you bought. I would have really hated to be a servant of Abram. And, I mean, how else are you going to get a bunch of other people involved in your fetish willingly? Especially if it's really... I mean, you can do what you want to your own privates. That's your right. But to get other people involved, to force them into it, to manipulate them into doing something they really don't want to do, that is wrong. And so what I think is happening here is that Abraham, or Abram, as is his real name, I think he changed his name himself to try and make himself sound more important. And changed Sarah's name to make her sound more important. Change the name to, upgrade it with the status of wealth that he just gained from Pharaoh. We're a little bit richer now. I think we can go by something a little bit more distinguished. Instead of Abram, I'm going to go by Abraham. Instead of Sarah, you're going to go by Sarah. And having my penis mutilated sounds really fun to me. How do I get everyone else to do it? Because I want to see mutilated penises in my entire house. Well, I think I will create a religion and make up as many and figure out all the best excuses that I can to make people do it. And, I mean, I own everyone. So are they going to tell me no? Especially if I make it sound good enough. And that I promise that we'll all get wealthier off of serving this God, aka me. I think that's what really happened here. There is also the possibility that psychedelic drugs were involved. Because they had that back then. But this is where so much of Christianity and Islam and the Hebrew religion all come from. This guy. This guy who scammed people successfully, got rich off of it. Aren't there a lot of religious people today who scam people out of their money? Seems like a trend. But he scammed people. There are people out there who defend circumcision. I am not one of them. There are people who say it's good for the body, that it's healthy. Google that for yourself. Don't go off the first thing that comes up as the result for the answer. Go off of multiple answers. There are people who say that circumcision is completely pointless. There are people who say it's good for you, and there are people who say it is actually bad for you, and that it can ruin some things for you. There are certain things I'm not going to get into it because I'm not a scientist or a doctor, and my personal experiences are my own to keep and to decide whether or not to share, and I will not. So, but I am personally of the opinion that it is completely pointless. There is and there are no health reasons given as to why God wants Abram to mutilate his and all of the males' genitalia in his house. And what's more, answer me this if you can, because I don't think you can. God supposedly made everything perfect, right? According to Christians, God is a perfect God, even though we've already seen him saying, I repented that I did this and that. I wish I hadn't created mankind. I wish I hadn't killed them all with the flood. I wish I hadn't done this and that. Whatever. Perfect God. Let's let the previous stories slide. And so we come to here. Let's say there are benefits to slicing up your dick. If Jehovah is so perfect with creating humans, there shouldn't be any birth defects. Oh, but birth defects is a side effect of sin? Okay, even if that were true, which I do not believe, some Christians might. Do you believe that in a God that is perfect? Are we saying that if birth defects are a result of sin, and you have to circumcise your penis because it's healthy for you, then that means you are with all men being born uncircumcised. That means all men are born with physical defects. That is what is being said here. Are we saying, like, are they really saying that Adam wasn't circumcised? That Noah wasn't circumcised? Did that matter back then? Because it wasn't mentioned anywhere in the Bible before now. All of a sudden, God is like, cut your dick up because I want you to. It's what's gonna prove that you believe in me. Really? Now? Why now? What? Is the need for circumcision also a result of sin? Because of sin, did our penises grow extra flesh over the head of the mushroom part? Like, really? Come on! What? Really? Really? Come on! Be serious here. We were not all born with defects. I mean, if we all were, then God is terrible at his job of creating humans correctly. He can't even make their penises right. Come on. And there's nowhere in the Bible that said our physical bodies changed because of sin. There is no defense one can give for why God would say that. Why couldn't God say, if you want to make this covenant official, I want you to carve a scar into your flesh in this shape to show that you belong to me. No one looks between your legs and is able to tell. Only God. Only God sees all. Only God can see between your legs and know if you're circumcised or not, or any woman that goes down on you. This is stupid. This is fucking stupid. This is a stupid decision and a request on God's part. Why should I have to cut up my penis to make a deal with him? Fuck that. Fuck that. Apparently, Abram was perfectly fine with it, because by the end of that same chapter, Abraham is slicing up the penises of everyone in his house, including a bastard child he had with a maidservant named Ishmael, who happened to be 13 years old. So, imagine being circumcised when you're 13. Wouldn't that be fucking traumatic? I couldn't imagine it as an adult. Mainly because I was circumcised as an infant. But this is the primary reason why children are circumcised in hospitals these days. Because of this. If Jehovah is a real God, he is a fucked up God. I mean, slicing your hand with a knife, or spitting into it and shaking someone else's hand who's done the same, that kind of makes sense, like a really strong blood pack. But this is ridiculous. This is savage. This is a man who lies to people and manipulates them gets them to do what he wants them to do, even to the point of making everyone in his house slice up their genitalia for his personal satisfaction. I mean, either Jehovah doesn't exist and Abram is a really fucked up individual in the head, or Abram just did as he was told and it's Jehovah who is really fucked up in the head, because this is not normal for human beings. Most humans are not like this. You can do what you want with your junk, but you don't go and force other people. And you know, there is another person, another famous scam artist who wasn't so different from Abram. He also believed God could speak to him. He got with a lot of women. And, the best part, he thought God could speak to him while looking at stones, at magical stones in a hat. And his name is Joseph Smith. He's the founder of the Church of the Latter-day Saints, Mormons. Like, what doesn't sound like a scam about that? He can look into a hat with magical stones and know what God is telling him. And he's all about polygamy and having multiple wives. And before he started Mormonism, he was a known scam artist who got with lots of women. Abram is a rich guy who can do the same thing, and he has his own fetish. Although it's not necessarily for women, it is for circumcision, genitalia mutilation. Honestly, I don't understand how people can be okay with this. I mean, I do to an extent, because I was myself at one time. I was a Christian, and I believed every bit of this. I know this story. I read through the Bible with my parents every morning. And I was taught to believe it. I wasn't taught to question it or to really think about it. And I was so sheltered. I didn't know the rest of the world. I didn't know that this covenant with Abraham, well, I didn't even fully understand it, because I didn't fully understand what circumcision was. I didn't know what a penis looked like before and after circumcision. I didn't understand why this was important. I still don't understand why this blood pact has to involve so many dicks for it to work. And it has to go towards every new dick that comes into the family, because not cutting up your dick is a bad thing and you don't get in on the blessing if you don't cut your penis. Really? Oh, what a shame. I would have liked to have my penis normal, but oh well. I didn't have a choice in the matter. The servants didn't have a choice in the matter. Ishmael did not have a choice in the matter. Tell me in the comments, does Abram sound like a guy that you would want to work for or be the son of? Does Jehovah sound like a god you want to worship? In conclusion, we come to what might be the real backstory behind the Bible. That a lot of it was based on some scam artist who had a fetish for cutting up genitalia. The entire Bible based on this guy. And I know we've reiterated it, but Even if it's true, once again, God has proven himself to be an asshole. An inconsiderate asshole. That was the word I was looking for last week. God is not considerate of his human beings. He would have made their penis right the first time. He would not have given them free will so that they would have disobeyed him. He would have put a fence around the tree. He would have been fair towards Pharaoh, who's totally innocent when being lied to by Abram. God has no problem with killing people. He has no problem with helping people who lie if he really likes that person. Because it was the plagues that got Abram out. So it seemed like God was helping Abram more than he was punishing him, since Abram left with so much stuff that wasn't his to begin with. And God is for genital mutilation, because it's a requirement. To make this covenant work, you can't just do a thumbprint of blood. Oh no, that's cheap. That's Hollywood. That's the devil. God takes it to the level from blood thumbprint all the way to penis. If the two of them were real, I would prefer to serve the devil. Thank you very much. At least he doesn't make me cut my penis up. But fortunately, neither of them are real. So we have nothing to worry about from either of them. Don't cut your penis up for a deal if it sounds too good to be true, because it's most likely not. The Israelites, who supposedly all came from Abram, still do not own the world. Their numbers are not as the sands of the sea or as the stars of the sky. Maybe if you include all the dead ones, but the ones currently living... Like, was that the point, or was God counting all the dead people too? I'm not certain. And are they all supposed to be in heaven? I don't know. I don't know what God had in mind and where he was planning on putting all these people that are supposed to come from Abram, but they're still fighting over that land over there. Started here, didn't start fighting here, but this is where it started, with God telling them this will all be yours. Ever since, the descendants of Isaac and descendants of Ishmael have been fighting over it almost relentlessly. Are you sure you want to be part of this religion? If you are, that is. You need to think about what you read. You need to look at it with logic, with fairness. Because a lot of that is missing in this book. Now, I understand we're on the third episode and we haven't talked about a whole lot of positive things that we can learn from this book. And I'm going to be honest with you, there isn't a whole lot when it comes to making you feel good and happy and something you can walk away with and think, yes, I could really use that in my life right now. We will come to those when we come to those. But not all truth is happy truth. Oftentimes the truth is ugly and unattractive. But it's important to know, because if you don't know it, then what are you believing? What are you living, if not the truth? You're living something else. Even if we are not learning new and happy things from this book, learning what the lies are is just important as learning what the truth is. Because in the end, if you know what the lies are, then you know what half the truth is. because you already know what isn't truth, and you can willingly choose to ignore it. You don't want to believe a lie. You don't want to put your faith in something that isn't true. So, you have to be willing to explore the things you believe to see if they really are true or not. Even if you've done it 100 times before, it doesn't hurt to do it again. There's always a new perspective, a new angle to look at something from. Don't shut your mind off to other perspectives, to other possibilities. Don't just accept what a preacher tells you. Don't just accept what one book tells you. Keep your mind open. Even if I say something that doesn't sound right and doesn't make sense to you, don't believe it. Regardless of what it is, use your own logic, use your own brain to learn the truth. But it means you have to keep your mind open to being disappointed, to being wrong. You have to be willing to face the fear that quite possibly everything you were raised to believe is a lie. But now I must draw this video to an end, so I hope that you have found this video educational. If you have, I hope you will leave a like. Hope you will subscribe if you haven't yet. It would really help me out in the goals that I am trying to fulfill through this channel. I have a whole separate video about that. If you would like to listen to an ongoing story that doesn't take such big skipping jumps as we have to with the Bible, then check out my story that I have shared here. 19 episodes long, about my life experience as a missionary kid and deconverting, and what has brought me to doing what I am today. In the meantime, stay safe, my friends, and stay thirsty for truth and knowledge. And until next time, farewell.